obviously a good deal, and we would rather see a mechanism that forces polluters like the fossil fuel industry to pay. Sorry.
No, I understand.
No, not
okay.
Immediately.
Yeah, okay.
Well, at COP29, there's just been a decision about a carbon market mechanism that allows for extending the lifespan of the fossil fuel industry, because it allows them to acquire credits for continuing polluting and for continuing greenhouse gas emissions. And what is worse, it's also allowing for carrying over projects from the Clean Development Mechanism, from the Kyoto Protocol, with no guarantee that there would be additional emission reductions. And if you're too geekily into the subject,
You know so much that
Kate and Anne have had really good, intense conversations.
well, both countries in the framework of their NDCs, but also companies could buy credits, carbon credits that they can use instead of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. And projects that make that happen on the ground often disregard human rights and communities' rights. We see things like land grabs, for example, on indigenous lands, and we don't see the rules to avoid that. She's definitely the journalist on the topic who's been digging most deeply. From our perspective, this isn't obviously a good deal, and we would rather see a mechanism that forces polluters like the fossil fuel industry to pay for the damage they've done, rather than giving them a get out of jail for free card. But what countries still could do, now that they have gavelled it off, is try to improve the guidance and strengthen the rules in the future. What we would like to see is stronger rules and standards, but also a more holistic environmental and human rights risk assessment that also takes.
You can identify consistencies, so if someone reports wrongly, this will be tracked publicly. Carbon mitigation targets that can also be used by companies for voluntary targets to reduce their emissions.
International carbon markets have been a very contested subject, so it took now almost a decade since the Paris Agreement to get all the rules in place. So it's a great day because it means we see a full operationalization of the international carbon markets, and that would of course enable now developing countries to generate revenues through the generation of carbon credits, and also to really now have a benchmark for the international carbon markets. There have been a lot of scandals in the voluntary carbon market recently that tainted the reputation of the market. The decisions made here will provide a really good and robust framework for international carbon markets in the next decades.
Could be detrimental to emission reductions, but now the rules that have been set and decided tonight.
For example, one rule refers to the reporting of the transfer of the emission credits, and these rules are now quite strong. You can identify so-called inconsistencies, so if someone reports wrongly, this will be tracked, publicly made a clear case, and therefore it is now a good frame in which you can do naming and shaming of those who want to use the markets in a wrong manner. And having this international mechanism, which, for example, applies very conservative approaches to calculating the emission reductions, which checks whether the project actually would have happened without the emission credit revenue. So it's a really strong basis on which we can now proceed. So in the real world, from the second half of next year, we will have methodologies to calculate the greenhouse gas reduction benefits of certain technologies. They can then make a request to the so-called supervisory body, which is a UN oversight, and then generate carbon credits that can be used against the national carbon mitigation targets that can also be used by companies for voluntary targets to reduce their emissions. So there will be a whole ecosystem of activities, and this could potentially be a market of several $billion.
From the second half of next year, we will have methodologies to calculate the greenhouse gas reduction benefits.
International carbon markets have done badly, actually could be detrimental to emission reductions, but now the rules that have been set and decided tonight, they provide a really good basis which is more robust, more credible, and therefore the criticisms, at least at this point in time, would no longer have a foundation.
Developing countries to generate revenues through the generation of carbon credits, and also